And so got that, and then I got a call, and they're like, it spent about 5 minutes going on about everything, and then eventually they got to the point, oh, guess what? You've won the prize. I'm like, oh, so good. And so, yeah, within a few weeks, had all the things, all the flights booked and everything, and we were doing media training with the government and the MB office, and Chris is a great guy. Chris Phillickson, he is awesome. Yeah, very exciting time. We had probably 50 people standing around taking photos and news interviews. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like what we see on TV. The downside though, I did drop the trophy. Big bang. It was a glass trophy. Started living by is do things, make strong decisions, but never look back. And I think that's quite valuable actually. But yeah, it was after meeting Mark, and I saw on his name badge it said CEO. I'm like, how the hell did I just go from meeting no one to in one night meeting around 6 or 7 CEOs of places who I'd never met before? I was like, how hard is it to be a CEO? Like, I want to be like them. And I was like looking up to them a whole lot. And I started thinking about like how Elon Musk was starting to like launch these rockets. And I thought, well, if he can do that, why couldn't I do it? And so those first like drives to want to do something like that, like I wanted to go and do big things. You shouldn't be doing it for money. And I completely disagree. What other bigger motivation do people have than that everyone wants to see cool stuff happen and no one's scared of seeing that future? We don't have an ingrained past that means that we can't do cool things now. And it's an opportunity we have. It's not something that has to stay true. And I think we should be trying to push the boundaries and actually be better. And not be scared to be held back by the people who aren't doing so.
Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today I am sitting down with Cairo Akehurst. I hope I've said your last name correct.
That's right.
Yeah. So me and him, we first met a couple of months ago at the King's Trust Foundation workshop.
Yeah.
And I'm currently working with him on his startup, which is Cattle Credit. And more details about that as we discuss further. But before we speak about entrepreneurship, businesses and all of that, I'm very keen on understanding your early life and your transition into entrepreneurship, right? So to get into that, like in your school, were you always an academically inclined student?
So this actually came up quite a few times in counselling sessions. How about? Yeah, but yeah, it was interesting because it started off with being, I was just obsessed with like doing math and science and stuff. And then I met a few people and got into the space like business stuff. And then I met a new teacher, right? And this is where it all started. And he introduced me to this new world. Everything else was like logical. One step leads on to the next. You start your degree, you move into a job. But the thing was, business was completely different to what I thought it was. And he basically showed me that that transition is a lot more daunting than I thought it was, I guess. And so what I realized was that you have to transition out of that logical thinking into more of a people-oriented sort of thing. So we started thinking about how can we connect with people and start getting good at public speaking and presentations, and that's all where it kicked off. And so that triggered a few things. It was pretty interesting in the first stages, like public speaking and that sort of thing. I remember back, and it was our first class. He had brought us up into doing a bit of a presentation in front of everyone, right? And I was terrified of this. And yeah, absolutely botched it. It was so bad. It was so bad.
Can I ask you what the presentation was about?
Oh, I forget now. It was some sort of business thing. We used to do like these class presentations, right? So we'd do pitching on a new business. And it was pretty good. I didn't realize what the value of that was in the first stages, but then after getting into more of the business side of things, I realized that that's probably the most important skill you can have. And yeah, so those first stages was horrible. Trying to do those first presentations, I go completely red. I wouldn't know how to say anything. I'd stumble on every single word. It was an absolute nightmare. But then started getting into more of it and getting forced into it, essentially. Didn't want to do it.
But when you say you're getting forced into it, was it like your teacher who forced you into it? Was it parents?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, you didn't really have a choice when you started getting into business stuff, right? So it started off, I had this other startup that I was thinking of doing. We're making these drones for agriculture. And disclaimer, that did not work, and it would not have worked.
Yeah.
And so I started off there being like that nerdy guy who thought he knew how to start a company. Little did I know, no, did not at all.
Yeah.
And so,
No, but just to interrupt you quickly, what age were you at this time?
I forget, this was probably first year school. Yeah,
School?
First year.
Oh,
Yeah.
that young?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, so let me get this straight. So you were really good at maths and science. You were really keen on doing that, and that your inflection point of getting into business was when you came across a teacher in your school who introduced you to this new world, and then you gave your first presentation, and you were like, oh, you're not able to do it so well. But then generally what happens for a lot of people is they try that and they fail at it, and then they're like, oh, probably not for me. What was that spark that said, oh, even though I'm good at science and maths or whatever, instead of sticking or reinforcing your strength, let me take a pivot and actually go further into business? There has to be something inside that, a calling or something that would have sort of. So let me put it this way: like, yes, other people might force you into doing something, but if you really don't want to do it, you will never do it. So there has to be something internally as well. So I'm trying to understand that. What was it internally that actually, like, no, I want to do this?
Yeah, I remember one time actually. I used to sit in this window seat thing, looking out the window, right? In the middle of the night, there's nothing to see, it's pitch black. And I was basically just picturing what space looked like. It was sort of like this self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. I thought that I had this gift, essentially, and I did not. Yeah, and I started thinking about like how Elon Musk was starting to like launch these rockets, and I thought, well, if he can do that, why couldn't I do it? And then, it started off like that, and I got really confident over it. So really confident, probably too confident. And so, I thought, let's start this drone business and let's try and start it off with doing low altitude drones, maybe up to like 150 meters, then start doing stratospheric stuff, so up into the stratosphere, and then start launching stuff into space. And I thought that was the pathway to do it. Probably not. And so, started building that first one, which was going quite well. And I think that taught me a lot. And this is actually quite a big opportunity that I think I'm quite lucky to have and grateful to have, was to have those first experiences of what it means to start a business, because if you don't know that, it's really hard to actually do it. And so those first drives to want to do something like that, like I wanted to go and do big things. And that sort of pulled me into those circles of people who are actually doing it. And I quickly realized that I was not as gifted as I thought it was. Everyone around me had done way more than I had done. Yeah. And that sort of triggered something else. And it was no longer about that excitement of it. It was more proving myself, because I didn't want to be the worst. I wanted to do a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. And the fact that there's other people around doing more, it was interesting, because that sort of drove me to want to do it as well, because I saw all these exciting things were happening in Christchurch, and that's another gift, being here. This place is incredible for starting aerospace companies, and there couldn't be a better spot. And so that was what enabled me to go from that first idea stage, sitting in your room thinking about how you can start a company.
Yeah. But what I want a lot of our audiences to understand is what actually motivated you was, and based what I sort of recount from your conversation, is you're wanting to prove to others that, and you're wanting to be in that space is like, no, I'm not a dummy, I'm smart as well. I think that is a lesson for a lot of people. If you fundamentally do not have that inner desire to want to prove, you will never challenge yourself. You will succumb to defeat or failure, and you will never actually surpass that. So that's an interesting takeaway from your story. But I want to circle back to the point where you got facilitated by the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Christopher Luxon. What was that competition? How did you get involved?
Yeah. This started with a project I had running, and it was actually the start of the startup we're working on at the moment. But yeah, so that was looking at how we could use satellite data for environmental uses. So we did this thing called the Space for Planet Earth Challenge. It was the best thing we could have done. And so that led us into learning about research and how we can actually go and figure out how to overcome these problems, basically first principles thinking. And so we thought about how we could try and use satellite data for better uses, and then we came up with this new methodology, this new way that we can enhance satellite data resolution, make it way more useful. And then that sort of spiraled out into a new business. And this was at the same time as the drone company. So I switched focuses. I was like, well, no, this has a lot more opportunity. Let's do this. And so, yeah, that started that. And then there's two parts to it. So I was trying to start a business, but also trying to be a researcher. And those things can go well together, but it was sort of difficult to try and do them both at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, when that first Prime Minister's thing came up, and it was interesting when it came up, someone told me about it. And I was like, huh, okay. Right, that sounds something that I could probably do. And it was interesting because it was also the time where I started to get known by the space agency and that sort of thing.
Right.
So it was it felt like a little bit of a calling that it came up. Right. And so we started coming up with the way. I had my mentors come and look over this stuff, and we're writing applications together. And yeah, we came up with a nice document to try and get this thing. And started putting our first submissions in, and got a whole lot of support from, I think we got 3 or 4 support letters from people around the world, actually. And yeah, so they helped us a lot to try and get that application very good. And then put that forward. A few months later, got a call from them.
Right, so basically students have to put in an application. Got it.
Yeah.
And got it. And you got a call. Yes.
Yeah, got the call. And that call was pretty exciting. But then I didn't realize that there was 3 interviews. I thought there was 1. So I was like, oh, God. Still got another 2 to go. Did the first one well. Thought I did well, at least. Heard back another 3 weeks later. Oh, good. I got in. Then went for the second one. Also good. And then I was actually, ironically, I was at an Aerospace New Zealand event just down on the floor, right here, and got a phone call halfway through. And now I remember what actually happened. So I heard someone standing next to me saying, they've already told the winners who's won. And I was like, hang on, how did I not win? I thought I had a really good application here. I haven't heard of anyone else doing anything like it. I thought it was a sure shot.
So this is winning the application of getting in.
Yeah. So this was to win the prize.
Got it.
Yeah. So this was the final stretch.
Got it.
And so got that, and then I got a call, and they're like, it spent about 5 minutes going on about everything, and then eventually they got to the point, oh, guess what? You've won the prize. I'm like, oh, so good. And so, yeah, within a few weeks, had all the flights booked and everything, and we were doing media training with the government and the MB office, and doing podcasts like this.
Oh, interviews. So this is not his first rodeo.
Yeah. Yeah, cameras everywhere. It was pretty exciting. Yeah. And yeah, then that night we walked into the Parliament building all dressed up, and stood in the foyer, waited for the Prime Minister, had a wee chat. Well, we had probably... What was going through your head at that moment? To be honest, I wasn't that nervous. I'd sort of worked up to that point, and I feel like I would have been if I hadn't had that exposure before.
Yeah.
But I had already been speaking with people, like delegations from over in Europe and China and stuff, all coming in, been in tons of interviews and all that sort of thing. It was nothing out of the normal for me to speak to high profile people. And to be honest, I don't like to think about people that way, because everyone's just a person, and the thing is, these people have just worked up to get to a high point, and that's also what I want to do. Yeah. And so no, it was nothing. Chris is a great guy. Chris Felixson, he is awesome. And so that was very exciting time. We had probably 50 people standing around taking photos and news interviews. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like what we see on TV.
Yeah.
Then we go in, start doing some presentations, and got called up on the stage, gave a bit of a speech, and everyone was shocked, which was pretty exciting. I mean, I felt so good after that. Nice. The downside, though, I did drop the trophy. Big bang. It was a glass trophy. That was not great, but it didn't smash. It was all good.
Good, yeah. Yep. All right, so now for Cattle Credit, right? Yep. While you were receiving this award from the Prime Minister, did you already have your Cattle Credit business registered by then, or did you do it later on?
Yeah, so I mean, we registered, did you say?
Yeah, like did you have that business already trademarked or?
Yeah, this was actually funny. I was speaking with my mentor the night before, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what you should do to prepare? We should register the business and get some bank accounts set up." And then so we could go in there and say, "We have a registered company." Oh, good, we do. Okay, so I did that the week before.
The week before
yeah.
getting the award. Oh, that's nice. But then,
Yeah.
did you know about like registering businesses and all of that beforehand, or
Oh, yeah,
did you
absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Got it. Yeah. So you are not pursuing, as per my understanding, higher education post school, and
We'll see.
we'll
Might do
see.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, your options are still open. But one of the reasons at the moment that's not the case is because you are very keen on giving startup a go. Now, the question that I want to ask is a lot of kids, they think they also want to probably become entrepreneurs. They have no idea. Okay, like even I was looking into, okay, probably should I start a business? What is a private enterprise? What is a publicly listed? All of that stuff. And it's so confusing that you're like, oh, probably it's way out of my hand. Somebody wants to take that risk with startup. There is no guarantees that it will succeed. Absolutely none. No matter how hard you work, there is always a possibility that, because 99% of the startups, they don't succeed, right? There is also other second stage where they expand to a certain level, but then they're not able to get the critical mass, or they're not able to go beyond a certain point. So that also happens. Now, when it is so difficult, right? Despite that, are you planning to take the jump into the startup field?
It's
What is
interesting
the
you say that because I actually have a different view. And the first thing I want to say, a whole lot of young people wanting to do it. Ignorance is bliss. What you don't know can't hurt you. Well, at least that's what people say, but the things that can hurt you. And so, yeah, those first steps are pretty easy to take. Well, they're the easier steps to take. Although people say starting a business is high risk, it's not high risk if you've got nothing to lose. And so, yeah, that first step where you don't know how hard it's going to be, that's the easiest step to take. And I think that's also the step you have to take to actually learn how hard it's going to be and actually get that momentum to actually do it. The other part I have to say, and I've said this for quite a while now, I don't think the reason why startups fail is because they were going to fail from the start. I think usually the reason why they do fail, and I haven't heard anyone else say otherwise, is down to the founder. And so it's about, actually quote Sam Altman, he said that starting a business is just like how many bad things can happen to you before you'll give up. And so the successful ones are the ones who can deal with the most bad stuff before they get to the good stuff.
So persistence.
Yeah, that's a big part. But I also think that it has to be a combination between persistence and actually being cunning on how you do stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do stuff in a smart way, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, in order to get smart, you also have to learn a lot.
So you have to be open to everything. And I think and that's the exact way to keep a business alive too. Like starting up is somewhat similar to keeping alive in some ways, but it's also very different in others. It's that fact of being dynamic and always being willing to learn stuff, and when problems come up, you have to solve them. And that happens throughout the entire time. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Once you start making money, it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So getting those skills at the start is what you need to start the company, but it's also what you need to keep it. I don't think that the reason why they fail is because that they would have failed. It's because of the founder not trying hard enough.
Right. And also, if I were to give you a couple of, for example, let's say curiosity, grit, persistence, just throwing these random words, how would you describe yourself?
I said this on a podcast a while ago, and I think it was quite a hit. Quite a few people started saying it to me afterwards. But it was relentless grit. And so, things get hard, and we know that. We've been working together on this stuff. And so it's just about being completely relentless with that and not giving up on it, because it's like pushing through, and what Elon said as well. It's like chewing glass and staring to the abyss. It is. But it doesn't have to feel like that, because it can feel exciting. It's about how you frame it.
Yeah.
Because the reality is anything you do can feel like hell.
Yes.
But if you make it like heaven, then you enjoy your work.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that you can, if for anybody else who is going through a startup journey or planning to take up a startup journey, is contemplating how to address difficulties. My point of view on this is, look, everything's going to go south. do you have the ability to sink through that? But how do you reach that mental state, right? A, you need to expose yourself to taking risks, smaller level, but calculated risks over and over again. That's one. B, you have to accept your circumstances however they are. Like if something happens, accept it. Like a lot of people, they live in denials or whatever. Like learn to take the brutal fact for face value, accept it for what it is, and then immediately start thinking of solutions and overcoming it, and then only focus on the solution. Okay, let's say for example, oh, some supplier is backed off. Completely hypothetical situation. Logically, what is it that you're going to do?
Well, it did happen. The
Right.
satellite left.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing comes up all the time, and it's if you can push through it, again, relentless grit. And so, yeah, it's about going around them and sort of navigating through them. And I think you mentioned something else there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like just focusing on, okay, what is the next step you can take to overcome that and focus on the solution. So essentially what I mean is like when you accept it in the value in the chain of events is like, okay, that has happened. Like it's a reality now. You know, this is something that you were betting on that is and it has gone wrong. You cannot exercise that option. What's next? Right? I still need to get from A to B, right? What people do is they choose a path and they're like, oh my god, this path is now broken or the bridge is broken or whatever. The analogy that I want to use now is, no, what if you decide to trek? What if you decide to go and build a raft, right? And cross the river? You know, you will have to like pivot into a completely different situation. But I feel like as an entrepreneur, it's very exciting that you have the creative free will to just go ahead and do all of those things, which as an employee working 9 to 5, probably you will never get that satisfaction. Yeah. And I think over time you will just become good at dealing with problems so much that when there are certain situations where people are like going around like headless chickens, you'll probably be as calm as a cucumber. You know, it's like just relax. It's like, oh, what's the big problem here? You know, it's like
Yeah. I mean,
it's just a matter of exposure, I guess.
yeah. The thing that I've recently, well, somewhat recently, about a year ago, started living by, is do things, make strong decisions, but never look back. And I think that's quite valuable, actually, because the thing is, we're not here to go and fulfill a bigger purpose, although you could be. I think that it is pretty important just to enjoy your life.
Oh,
And so,
absolutely.
this is the whole point. Like, what's the point in actually doing anything if you're not going to enjoy any of it, or help anyone else enjoy any of it more? And so I think that that's the whole point of it, being cool as a cucumber. What's the point in being sad about things all the time?
Yeah.
What's the point in that? It's boring.
Boring, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't ever want to be burdened down by something bad happening. And so never looking back on things. There's always an opportunity. And so if you look back on anyone who started anything, it doesn't matter if it's been a company or they started a non-for-profit or it's just their job, they all started from nothing. And so they worked their way up to something. And if you look back to what it was like when you had nothing, you're in the same point as you are now, because now you have a problem and you had to try and figure it out. And so now you just had to go through that same process that you went through at the start to evaluate what's happened. What's the situation? What are the knowns? And then figure out a way forward. And I think that's a really strong skill set to have and never to lose. And I think a whole lot of people do lose it because once you get stuck in that first steps of your career or anything, you make those decisions and then you don't necessarily have to think about that stuff so much anymore because it's all sort of sorted for you. It's like when you're first figuring out what you want to do, it's hard to figure out, it's stressful. But once you've got it all sorted, you know what you're doing, it's not as bad. There is obviously things that come up, but it's about staying in that same mindset and that have that ability to evaluate things. And again, first principles thinking. It's not just about technical things, it's about everything.
Yep.
It's evaluating things and making decisions on how to move forward. And so those are how you make the best decisions. And it's also about just enjoying them.
Yes.
Make things that are going to support what you want, not just supporting an end goal that you might enjoy for the last 10 years of your life.
Yep. Yep. Also, you have met Mark Rocket.
Yeah, great guy.
And you have also visited the Rocket Lab facilities. Can you tell our audience members on what is Rocket Lab, who is Mark Rocket, and what was it like visiting those facilities?
Yeah. It was short. It was quite cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So I met Mark quite a long time ago. Well, in my terms, about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. At the first aerospace event that I signed up for, and someone recommended it to me. I came along and I was like, yeah, this is another story actually. I first came into that being quite nervous. It was my first networking event. Fair enough. And after that, I probably felt as energized as I had ever been. And I then sort of thought, maybe I'm an extrovert, maybe not an introvert. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, it was after meeting Mark, and I saw on his name badge it said CEO. I'm like, how the hell did I just go from meeting no one to in one night meeting around 6 or 7 CEOs of places who I'd never met before? I was like, how hard is it to be a CEO? Like, I want to be like them. And I was like looking up to them a whole lot. And now I sort of feel like I'm at similar levels because I'm actually doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so the way that I judge people is not by what status they've got, but of what work they're doing. And so that's another thing. But yeah, after I met Mark, I started to learn a bit about the journey of Rocket Lab, and he was the first investor into Rocket Lab. He started working with Pete Beck, when he was doing his first sounding rockets. And by the way, this is just from memory. I've never worked there. But yeah, it's quite a big story. And so Pete was making these rockets, so they're quite cool. They're launching them out from Buildings Flat, I'm pretty sure. And funnily enough, we're actually launching a weather balloon from the same spot. Yeah, following in his footsteps. And so, yeah, I sort of started to learn a bit about Rocket Lab, and it's like this big success story. And it's sort of New Zealand's first kickoff. And so that's actually what started the space agency as well. So everything sort of stemmed out of Pete's work. And so, yeah, it started off like that. And then I started getting more involved, starting learning about it. And then PM Space Prize comes up. And it's like, oh, yay, we get to go to Rocket Lab. And so, yeah, went for that visit. The first one was awesome. Going to go see them in Auckland. It was incredible. Their operation is like top notch. There is no operation I've seen that's been better than that so far.
Yeah.
And so they have everything under control. They're full stack. Like, they've got everything going on there. It's full, people walking in and out. I'm like, this stuff is crazy. This is exactly what the stuff I want to be doing. And so, yeah, that was awesome. And then the couple of days afterwards, we flew out to LA and went to their Long Beach facility. Saw what they're doing in space systems, which is cool. See all their reaction wheels and all that sort of thing for the satellites all being built. And what's going to be even more exciting is when we get to go and see their launches from in the US for Neutron, which will be very cool.
I believe they're also coming up with a new launch pad here in New Zealand as well, right?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Maybe.
I was just maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it'd be exciting too.
Yeah. All right. So I've got like 3 questions that I want to end this discussion on. Unfortunately, I could carry on, but for the sake
I could
of
talk forever.
yeah, I know, right? I mean, but for the sake of time. But yeah, so one of my questions is, how did you get excited about space, and why space?
Yeah. I don't think it had to be space, but the first step was, again, sitting there just thinking about what we could be doing. And it did start off a little bit with Elon, because he sort of like forged the path and he showed that it was possible to do something like that. And I'm not intending on following in his pathway, but it was sort of like that first thing and showed, yes, we can actually do this. It's not crazy to do. So yeah, that sort of stemmed a little bit. But the other thing is, space is like the one thing we haven't done. And so that's like the one place where there's opportunity to do the most stuff. That's why they call it the wild, wild space.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Wild West. Nothing's been done. Everyone's chasing it. Everyone's trying to take control of it. And so it's the most exciting spot to be. What other industry do you get that?
Absolutely. And if you think about the long-term game, right? The most cutting-edge science is required in space, but also for somebody who starts now and works with like a 10, 15-year timeline, he's got a first-mover advantage. And in 10, 15 years, he or she would put themselves in a spot where they are quite literally doing stuff that nobody else has the ability to catch up, right? And space is also the final frontier. It's the cutting edge of everything else. You see like the best of you. There's no failures there. There's no margin for errors. But yeah, that's exciting from a science point of view. But there's also exciting from a business point of view. Second question: what is your future looking like? What do you see yourself going into the future?
The given, this is the one thing I do know for sure, want to be a billionaire. That's the one thing. But the reason why is not because of what most people would say. The reason why is really because, I think we've spoken about this a few times, the amount of things that capital gives you, the amount of things you can do, there's so many crazy things you can do in this world. But the thing is, everything at the moment has to be profitable. Everything has to be a business case. Everything has to support government. But that's not really what drives cool things to happen, and these things that we could have but we don't have because they don't make us money. And so what I really want to be able to do is go and make those things happen. And so yeah, that future just looks like a whole life of just building cool stuff, making stuff actually happen and taking it from being a concept to actually being true. And I mean, we'll see. Maybe I'll live in space. I like to do that.
Actually, now that you said, instead of going with the last question, I have another question in between.
Yep.
Why do you want to be a billionaire? And one answer you've already given, that is you want to go and make things happen, all the stuff. But is it the flashy cars, as a side thing, or?
I think that this is another interesting thing, actually, because there's sort of this notion in the startup world that, well, in some circles, that you shouldn't be doing it for money. And I completely disagree. What other bigger motivation do people have than money?
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing for most people. And so I think that that's probably the biggest driver for wanting to start a company, because the amount of money you can make is insane. It's not limited. And so that is one thing that I would like. There's two parts. There's the world that you want to see, but there's also the life that you live within that world.
Yeah.
And the reality is I like the cool things, and quite often those cool things are expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about actually just forging that future. And I think that's what I want more people to take away from that. And it's that you can actually build what you want the future to look like.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree with you. And I also want to give my answer on this. Is if somebody asks me, okay, why is it that you want to be a billionaire? It's simple. First is freedom. Freedom to be able to do whatever I want. Go get up on a random Tuesday and just because I feel like it, fly to a different continent, buy the most expensive car there, eat the best food, and just be free,
Yeah.
That allows me to take care of my family members, allows me to take care of my friends, it allows me to take care of my community. But with that freedom also comes freedom to take risks, which means that if I plan bigger projects, I don't worry about what might happen. Like, I can just go ahead and like you said, and this is where you and me are thinking align, is like, I want to make stuff happen, It will allow me to take on bigger projects. It will allow me to take on some big risks with science, technology, and all of that, which is second. And in a very sort of idealistic kind of a way, like, yes, if we can like change the world, make an impact, not because I want to be remembered once I'm gone or whatever, like I don't care, but make an impact in the sense like, yes, like you did something, you made a mark, and that's it,
Yeah.
So that's my answer. But the final question is, what do you think of New Zealand's entrepreneurship space? What are your comments on it? And what is your message for all the young Kiwis, if you have any?
Yeah. I love it. And I also hate it. The things that I love are the fact of the community. Everyone is so close to each other. Everyone always says that it's two degrees of separation between any person. And it is true. I think if I wanted to have a meeting with someone tomorrow, I could get it within a few hours. That's how close everyone is. And so, it's that. That is the real superpower we have. That's the biggest one, for at least in the business space. But in those like cutting edge tech spaces as well, we have a really big advantage. Like in the agri-tech space or the aerospace space, we have this massive place that we can call our home and actually build cool stuff in. And there isn't many other places in the world that can say that. And it's also that sort of that notion that Kiwis have, that number 8 wire thinking, and everyone always says it, and it's cheesy, but it is true, that everyone wants to see cool stuff happen, and no one's scared of seeing that future. We don't have an ingrained past that means that we can't do cool things now. We have a future that we're building right now, and there's so many cool things happening, and there's no reason why we shouldn't stop that, and we should be doing it even more. And so that's really why I love it here. The things that I don't love so much is the fact that well, one, it's tall poppy syndrome. So many people are too scared to do it. And it's not because they're scared to take a risk or that sort of thing. It's more of the culture that we've built, and we've built this culture that we shouldn't be doing more than someone else. But the thing is, the only way we can do more than someone else is if one person takes that first step. And so it becomes this fact that we all grow together. But at the moment, and I've seen it myself a whole lot, people are too scared to do better than someone else, so they won't do it, or they won't tell someone about it. Everyone needs to be humble. And I think I got this comment too many times now. People say, oh, you're so humble about this stuff, you haven't even mentioned it. And I'm like, am I? Really? And I feel like I started learning not to be humble. And it's actually been quite useful.
Yeah.
As much as I don't like to brag about anything or anything that I find cool, it is true that it brings so much opportunity, and I think that people shouldn't be so scared to do it. And I think that's an opportunity we have. It's not something that has to stay true. And I think we should be trying to push the boundaries and actually be better, and not be scared to be held back by the people who aren't doing stuff. So
Right.
that would be my message. Go and actually do something crazy.
Yeah. No, and I second that. And to anybody listening, like irrespective of age group, like the best thing you can do is the person who is creating, who is doing, who is in motion and in momentum is always going to win. Always. If not now, if not tomorrow, if not day after, if not in 25 years, but in the 30th year, he will be a winner.
Yep.
Simple. It's simple as that. But yeah, so just keep
Exactly.
doing. And with that, thank you so much for joining. And
Yep.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Yep, me too.
Looking forward for a few more.